Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, everyone. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the final day of the TRG LearnFest 2020. What an incredible week it has been. Tremendous amount of learning. So many people from across the world, across continents have joined in, not just speakers, but also people who are keen on learning from so many different diverse mindsets. It's been incredible, the diversity of the speakers as well as the learners who've shared their learning and interacted through the comments and so forth. I would encourage you to keep on doing that today as well. A big shout out to TRG and TRG's members, the founder members. They've done an incredible job in this crisis, a true an example of how we come together and went digital and put up a great show. Umair, Sarah, and the talk team have done a fantastic job. Big thank you for them as well. This has been more successful than the imaginations of the people and were part of this. So again, wonderful experience and thank you for being a part of it. It's not over yet though. Today is all about making it happen. That's the theme of today. We've had great learning in the last 5 days. Today is day 6. But let's take a look. Let's take a quick look at what this 1 week has been about. I'm sure many of you have been part of it. But what has this week been about for you? Add that in the comments, by the way. We started off, again, 5 days ago with Walaikum Assalam, Rafi Al-Dasir. We started off this week with, bringing people together, welcomed everybody, and then varied topics. There was technology, of course, in the middle. There was leading and learning through crisis, which is so relevant, so important right now, and in various kinds of learning. Now we are on day 6. In day 6, when I think about making it happen, I think about what it makes me think about is, when is learning really complete, right? And is learning really complete without action, without implementation? That's a question for you as well to reflect upon. And the way this question was answered for me was once when I was reading about the great Imam Ghazali and how in a short 54 years of his life, this is a story of maturity in his life. And one incident that took place that helped him to realize and make a relationship with learning. And I think for all of us, fellow students, fellow learners, it's such an important relationship in our lives with learning, is when he had spent 3 years learning from others, much like what many people have done in the last 1 week. And he was taking notes, and he was going everywhere with different teachers, and he had these notebooks where he had all of his learning. And now he was heading back, and he was part of Dharma, and that was hit by thieves. And his books were in a satchel where everyone else had their wealth, right? And so they took away his bag and everyone else's bag, and as they were going away, he couldn't accept that his learning, his books, his notebooks were taken away from him. And so he started following these learners. And as he did that, these thieves, he started following these thieves, and as he did that, they noticed him and ignored him for a while, but then they stopped, they turned around, and they asked Imam Ghazali, please stop, otherwise we will kill you. Stop following us, otherwise we will kill you. And having that opportunity of the interaction with the thieves, he said, look, in my bag is my knowledge. It's of no use to you, but it's of infinite value to me. You can take away all the bags with all the jewels and the wealth, but my bag with my knowledge, my notebooks, please return that to me. It's of no use to you. And to that, the chief thief, he smiled, almost laughed, and he looked at Imam Ghazali and he said, what kind of knowledge do you claim to possess that I can steal away from you? And in that moment, Imam Ghazali says, as he's writing about this incident, he says that in that moment, I knew that this was meant to happen. This was meant to teach me that I need to learn in a different way. And to me, making it happen, making it happen for you is all about application. As Ali said, knowledge without application is like a donkey with books laid on his back. A little harsh, but I think he's really bringing the point home. He said it hinders flight. And so today, I welcome you to this final day where this 2020, where it's all about making it happen. How are you going to make it happen? It's going to be a very, very interesting day. We have a great lineup as we've had over the last 5 days. And again, I want to thank the TRG founder members who will join us at the end of today. And I'll start with that 4 p.m. So do join us. All of them will be there. We will have a quick Q&A with them, get their perspectives, and of course, get to thank them for putting up such a brilliant show. Again, I would thank Talk and Umair and his team. They've done a great job, a seamless digital experience, which has been fantastic. All the speakers, all of you, all the learners who participated from across the world, it's been brilliant to have you. And so let's get to today. What is today about? First up, we have Dr. Irfan. He is the rector of IoBM. I had the opportunity to just have a quick conversation with him a few weeks ago, and I could quickly understand his vision for education for the country and of course for IoBM itself. I'm really looking forward to his keynote. His keynote is all about learning by doing, which is something I'm so passionate about. It's really important that learning transfers over, right? It creates impact. The value of learning is the impact it creates, the benefit it creates for you, your team, your organization, and the society, right? So really looking forward to Dr. Irfan Hyder. He brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, and he's going to be talking about learning by doing. We will then, at 10:45, we will move over to a dialogue, which is about elevating society with business. And that will be Azfar Ahsan, or my namesake. He will be the dialogue enabler, if you will, as part of the Nutshell conferences. And in his panel, the moderator will be Faraz Khan with Seed Ventures, Dr. Aisha K. Khan with Acumen, and Ayla Majid with KMR, Chartered Accountants. So again, looking forward to that. That will be about elevating society with business. And I think if we just allow businesses to flush. Oops. So that will be such an incredible part of the growth of our economy in our country as well. So really looking forward to that. But that's not the end of the day. That's the morning piece. And then we'll come to the afternoon piece where we have 10 different workshops running. That, again, will be for you to choose.
Don't miss this exciting opportunity to learn at Pakistan's first learning festival.
Do you understand the difference between disability and being differently able?
All about learning with fun.
Simply because this is for the first time we, the trainers, are paying for you to come and get trained. Jeete raho.
Be a change agent.
Learning is unlimited.
At LearnFest, turn yourself on.
Get ready for a series of highly engaging and powerful training sessions at LearnFest.
See you there.
And then, of course, we have the afternoon session, which is packed with learning. We have 10 different workshops for you to choose from. There is Dave Nelson with brainstorming techniques. There's Bounce Back with passion after adversity. Such an incredible topic for today's times with Aisha Bela Malik. We have Life After COVID, Future of Future with Shahbaz Islam. Intrigued with that topic. Make It Happen, which is, of course, the theme of the today by Muhammad Ali from Carnelian. Managing time in challenging times. Zishan Fahim and personal finance management, manage income and increase wealth by Yasser Wahid. Carrot Stick and Beyond by Farhan Ali Jamali. Leading with Trust, such an incredible topic, of course, and more of a need in today's times. Again, Aisha T. Sethi from the Sethi Learning Company. Talent in Action by Dr. Athar Siddiqui. Dr. Athar is a friend of mine, and I think it will be an incredible session. I highly recommend. He's from KSBL. And Scrum, Agile, a Journey to Success by M. Fahad Khan, Agile Coach at JCPenney. 10 incredible sessions that you see on your screen. You can make a choice and enter any one of them. But I will tell you also this. If you're of course a member and if you've done your bit, there will be the opportunity to have all these recorded sessions that you can view for a good few months after the LearnFest as well. So you missed some of the sessions, become a member, go to the trg.org.pk and become a member and find out how you can get access to all of this learning from all these 6 days, and so that the learning can continue. And one of the things about learning is if you really love something, go back and take a look at it again. I can guarantee you that you'll extract more wisdom from all of these people. Finally, once again, at 4 p.m., we bring the entire TRG founder members together, and we will have a word with them and ask them and again extract more wisdom from them. That will be our final session for the day. But today, as I said, it's all about making it happen, and we're about to learn from Dr. Syed Irfan from IoBM about learning by doing. Dr. Irfan, over to you.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Irfan Hyder. I am rector of IoBM, and today I'm going to talk about learning by doing in post-corona scenario. We think that learning is in crisis. I think that is not true. Learning is actually poised towards a new dimension that has been ignored for long. I've been looking at learning by doing and project-based learning and experiential learning for the last 15, 20 years. And all of this quest, when I reached this space or this topic, it was my experience of teaching at IBA Karachi and then at other institutes like PFPEAT and FAST, where I found that the students are not motivated. Now, so I thought maybe it has to do with curriculum. It may have to do with the teachers not taking interest. It may have to do with what we are teaching. So I tried to design systems that would imprison the student in a state where they had no option other than to study. So I designed IT systems coming from that background. I tried to ensure that the the campus management systems are monitoring the interactions of the students, monitoring the interactions of the faculty, and so on and so forth. The more I try to squeeze the students, and over here I would like to quote Dr. Wahab, ex-director IBA, who left us some time ago, used to say in his orientation speeches, he used to quote that saying, Western saying, that you can bring the horse to water but cannot make it drink. But at IBA, we were proud to say that we will not only bring the horse to the water, but will open its mouth and will shove the water inside. That's the carrot and the stick approach that has been conventionally used, carrot being the good grades and stick being the hanging sword of the failure. But the more I try to implement these things at IBA and elsewhere, the more I found that I'm fighting a losing battle. And then I shifted my focus to the faculty members. I thought maybe the faculty members are not motivated. And then I started squeezing them for several years into making sure that they are delivering what they ought to be delivering. But then later on, and I think the turning point was Randy Pausch's lecture in 2007, the famous last lecture, which if you have not seen, then you have missed out a great deal in life. That was the turning point when I realized that it has nothing to do with the students. It has nothing to do with the faculty members. It is our own system that is forcing the students to become disconnected. And what that system is, and there are several cornerstones. Today, I will try to briefly touch upon maybe one of them. And there are other talks that I have made on this subject, which you can see. But this is actually the whole idea of the curriculum. And today, recently, we also saw the uniform national curriculum being taken out by the government and with a lot of fanfare. And I think it's stillborn curriculum. So what's the problem? So how can you motivate the students? And here I would also refer to a very famous saying, I believe it is Deming's, that people are not demotivated. They don't need to be motivated. They are actually motivated by themselves. It is only the demotivators around them that have to be removed. And the demotivators around them is our curriculum, is our syllabus, the way we actually teach them. So how we are teaching them? As you can see, if you look around, you will find out. So this curriculum, the way it is thrown down the throats of the people, is configured in a bottom-up fashion, where the initial years are the basics, the grammar, the words, the meanings, and so on and so forth. And the interesting part of the stories, interesting part of the romance, the adventure, the thrill, the detective stories, and the suspense, that waits for maybe 10. And by that time, Kaun Jeeta Hai Tere Zulf Ke Sar Hone Tak. And by the time the students reach that stage, they are fed up of what has been taught. And it is no wonder that after going through 10 or 15 years of English, we find these students not knowing anything. They come out with degrees. I typically look at the PhD students and I find them lacking in very basic skills. And all of them have gone through, they have passed all kinds of tests. They have gone through various universities. They have passed the GAT subject, this subject, and that course, and so on and so forth. But nothing is happening. Why it is not happening? Because the love for learning is not there. The curriculum that we have designed, it is designed in a way to take out the spirit from the learning. Learning is natural. A child starts learning from very beginning, is thrilled by learning, he wants to explore, he wants to go out and try new things. He would like to climb and he will fall down. He will like to walk like his parents, but when he can't, he falls down, he gets injured. But all these injuries, but these trial and error continues. But what he's looking for is exploration, the adventure, the thrill, the curiosity of finding new things. And of course, and then there is a suspense also. What is happening? Why the parents are talking something in very hushed up voices? What are they talking about? There appears to be some kind of a problem in the family, and so there is also this suspense, and they want to know what is happening. And but this happens in the childhood. And the moment the student gets into the university, by that time he has lost all this thrill, the curiosity, because now we are making him to do things that he doesn't want to do. So he has to memorize useless words which do not make sense. Why I need to write a letter on a day on the beach, why I need to write a day in a zoo, and these kinds of Ladybird or Thunderbird or those kinds of stupid books which no one wants, and because of the political correctness, the books have lost the mystery. They have lost the demons, the fairies, and the giants, and the magicians, and so we have gone away from Alif Laila. We have gone away from Talisma Hushruba. We have gone away from Dastane Hamid Abza. We have gone away from the history, or from the mythical figures and the things that excite the students. And we have gone into such dull and drudgery books that are focused on mechanics. When I look at how I learned to read, it was not because of what was being taught in the schools. It was those books, those exciting books. It was my discovery of Hardy Boys. It was my discovery of Rider Haggard. It was my discovery of Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes. It was my discovery of various other interesting authors. And similarly, it was my discovery in Urdu literature of Afrasiyab, of Umro Yar, of Amir Hamza, of Landor, and of course of Pakistan, and so on and so forth. So those are the things that excite the students, and these are the natural stories. So coming back to what is learning by doing, here I am just focused on the language learning part. I'm not focusing basically on physics and maths, but I can actually have similar lectures on these areas also. But the important thing to know is that the child learns to talk and to converse using stories like these, which stimulate his curiosity and thrill about the capacity of the human being and what is possible and what is not possible. These are the things that one is learning from these mythical stories. So what is possible, what is not possible, what is the extent of our imagination, and how one can be transported from one place to another with the blink of an eye. And these are all those imaginations which have now come together in the form of Harry Potter, and, Matrix, and so on and so forth. So when we talk about learning by doing, we are talking about real life problems. And the real life problems by definitions are very interesting. For instance, teaching a story to a child is very interesting problem. Catching the imagination of the student is a real life problem. So if you are doing that, you are learning. And you are not only learning how to improve your communication skills, but also improving the skills of the children. And similarly, learning by doing, experimentation then goes on. So the projects that the student does, how do you learn to, for instance, and you can go into various areas where, so there are projects and experiential learning. So how did you learn to talk in public? You do it by speaking in public. How do you learn to drive? You learn to drive by driving. You learn to cycle by cycling. You learn to swim by swimming. And you cannot do any of these things without doing. Now, when we come today, another thing which is very interesting in these projects, whenever you look at the projects that are given to the students, and I'm talking about the real life projects, a real life project like giving them a bunch of sticks and asking them to make a windmill, for instance, maybe a model of windmill, which resembles something which is one can see in the real life. Now, there are the resource constraints, and there are, of course, the various physical features of the sticks that are being used. And now here comes the interesting part of the constraints that are put in it. And I think there are so many different types of examples that in workshops the trainers are often using, like giving them paper and making them to make bridges, or making them build towers. These are all real life problems, and it is this reality that there are constraints, and within the constraints you have to make something, and that something should resemble something in the real life, and that stimulates the thinking, that engages the student, that develops the thinking. Now, coming back, I was talking about the real life problem. So considering the real life problem that is often given in training workshops, for instance, giving them a rubber band or maybe some tape and paper, and asking them to make a bridge or making them making tower. Now, if you look at it, this is a top-down problem. So you have been given something, you have been given a problem, and now you are. Now, while developing various alternatives, they start learning the various principles. They start learning what are the different types of forces that are acting, what is statics, what is dynamics, how the difference, the changes in various things will happen, how the forces are balanced against one another. How do you increase the strength by making them into a triangular shape of a truss, or maybe having beams and the structure. Okay, so when we are looking at this entire thing, so now these are the okay, everyone can see and hear me. Good. I don't know. So anyhow, so I was talking about that problem of making a bridge with papers. And then one begins to discover that there are forces, there are strength of material issues, there are various structures. When you fold the paper in a certain way, you increase the strength, and when you combine them with a bigger base at the bottom, you can hold the smaller things up there. Now here comes the integrity, the nitty-gritty of the balancing and the forces and their interactions and the gravity and the weight and all of those things. Now remember that in this process, you are going from top to bottom. That is, you are going from a complex problem to the components which become easier to understand as you go down. Now, the fundamental problem in with the design of the conventional curriculum is that it always goes up from the basics to the complex, from simple to the complex. Whereas in actuality, the learning happens from complex to the simple. You drill down into something as you are discovering, and you are discovering the nature of the forces, their interactions, their severity, their bending moments, and their shearing forces, and so on and so forth. So some of the technical terms in the structures, I think. So coming back, so the real life problem, whenever we pick up a real life problem, we know for sure that it will be interesting to the students. So learning by doing basically is focusing the students to work on real life problems or things that resemble real life, and start doing it with their hands. And once you get stuck somewhere, then a small lecture about the forces and their dynamics and their statics relationships can become more meaningful to you. However, in a traditional curriculum, we go from simple to complex, where we are trying to first make them understand all kinds of forces and all kinds of vectors and their additions and their interplays and all the complex mathematics. And one doesn't know why one is doing all of this. I believe by turning the whole system from simple to complex to simple, that one can increase the curiosity, one can make the students explore and experiment and become. So there is a question, sir, how to get progress and grip in medical learning? So medical learning is, of course, another, and in medical field, project-based learning is typically a terminology which is used in engineering or at the school level. Experiential learning is the name of the same thing, but used mostly in social sciences and business. And at the school level, it is typically called as activity-based learning, whereas in medical schools, it is known as problem-based learning. Of course, there are small differences in between, but the essence is same. So I believe most of the educational institute, Aga Khan, Ziauddin University, and many others that I have come across, have already moved to problem-based learning. So in the very first semester, they give the students symptoms of a disease and ask them to go and explore. And this is what is happening in a top-down fashion. So all problem-based learning and actually project-based learning also originated from Stanford Medical School, and it is premised on the same thing. And this is not something that I'm proposing for the first time. There are so many disciplines that already do this. What are those disciplines? One of them is architecture. If you look at architecture, they always work with projects, and they always work with real life projects and their models. The other good example is accounting. So accounting people, you can't get into the professional courses of accounting unless you have spent 3 years doing articleship with companies and solving their real life problems. And similarly, then there is lawyers. And similarly, of course, medicine is one of the beautiful examples. You can't get a degree unless you have done clinics starting from 2nd or 3rd year. So it is the top-down process, and that is and why medical students are not given a license to practice unless they have done house job and all of their clinics. Why? Because lives are at stake. Why architects have to do all of this in a project-based learning manner? Because lives of people are at stake with their fancy models. If they have not worked, if they suppose fall down because of some mistakes. So these actually disciplines actually help us they help us understand what it is all about. So learning by doing is not something new, but it is new for the disciplines that have become too bookish. They have been divided. And one of the interesting things that I must, there are 2 or 3 minutes, there are so many aspects of learning by doing, but I'll talk about one more thing, and which is that division of curriculum into senseless subjects. If you look at medicine, when a person has a problem, under which subject that problem comes in, it is very difficult to differentiate whether it lies in this subject or in this subject. Similarly, making a bridge, under which subject it will come. A bridge has to do with feasibility. Bridge has to do, and it also has to do with politics. So all the flyovers getting constructed, so there was politics involved. There's also sociology, because once you have a freeway and a bridge in between, you divide one community from another. Of course, the bridges have to do with civil engineering. It has to do with architecture. It has to do with flow of traffic. So there's transportation in there, and of course, then actual bridge making has metallurgy in there, materials in there, construction in there, and so on and so forth. And of course, you can't build anything without managing a whole team of people together. So a bridge construction is, and it's also artistic in nature. There are beautiful bridges that people have done. So it is a collection of all the different disciplines which come together in coming out with something which is a real life project. And this is true for every real life project. Let me show you. You pick up a real life project and I can dissect it and tell you each and every discipline of the world working in there. And that's the beauty of the real life projects. And that's also the beauty of why people and the students get interested, because someone will get interested in the psychology of it. Someone else will become in the art of it. Someone else will come in the mathematical calculations and the physics of the entire thing. Someone else will come under the will be stimulated by the management problem that there is, and someone else will come under the will become interested in the politics of all these things. So there are so many angles in real life projects that can stimulate the thinking of different types of students. So it's not necessary that when you are given a problem, different people can work on different areas of the problem, and they can stimulate their learning in those. And it is also interesting because someone who is weak in maths can then focus on the arts of the bridges, and someone who is and by working on the arts of the bridges will also discover and probably will help in developing the maths of the bridges. So learning by doing is very interesting. And lastly, what I would like to mention, if I'm given a couple of more minutes to conclude this thing, I think the uniform national curriculum with which the government has come up is will be a failure, especially in the post-corona situation. Today, what is the curriculum? Today, YouTube is the curriculum. Today, what is the textbook? The textbooks are, you type a problem or a search string on the Google and you get millions of websites containing the information. So the days are gone when you were given a book to read. The days are gone, and especially because of this coronavirus and the lockdown, the schools have become alerted to all these alternative ways of learning. They have understood what a wealth of information is available, and the students have been given the access to the gadgets to actually use them for something much more meaningful than TikTok and the other games, but doing something much more constructive, like developing their own YouTube channel, learning new businesses, understanding about new areas that they are interested in. So in the days in the coming, and this was the disruption that people were worried about in the education, and I think the educational institutions have become really a trailblazer in adopting the new technologies. They have managed to change their faculty members in a tremendous way. They have managed to change their curriculum and modify their curriculum in a very fast manner, and they have enabled the teachers to learn new technologies, and also the students, of course. Students are always ahead because this is their realm. You see, they are the millennials, and I think they are much faster in learning than the teachers. But we have. Do you see schooling change to the same extent from primary and schools? Yes, I see so. I see that happening, although it may be a bit more difficult. The technology part may be difficult, but some kind of a blended learning is going to be there and stay over there. And it's really interesting. So if there are other questions, I would be happy to answer them. And if I have a bit of time, I don't know. So, interesting. Yes. This is, you see, realize that everything connects to everything else. And this is the precise reason why the traditional curriculum, which compartmentalizes the knowledge, which in their eulogizing the specialization, they have compartmentalized the knowledge. They have divorced the knowledge from all the interconnecting pieces, and that is the reason why students have become bored by knowledge, why they have to be made to learn something which they were doing at a very early age. So a small hole in the for a socket was a very interesting piece, and I think each one of us has experienced the thrill and, of course, the shock, the literal shock that we have experienced by trying to see what happens if you put your finger in there. And alhamdulillah, we are all here after going through that experience. But that's how we were made. This exploration of understanding the severity of what it means to get a shock, electrical shock. So these are the things that we must focus. And just to recap once again, we need to turn our delivery of knowledge from simple to complex, as it is currently, to complex to simple. And from complex to simple, you can think of maybe the Bloom's taxonomy also, although I have concerns about it. But it can be a good way to understand that you are going from the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy to the lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy. But I think the lower levels are superfluous if you are really interested in the invention. And anyone who has mastered, who has learned how to make a video, has learned it the hard way, and it's very interesting. So without even knowing the intricacies and sitting in a lecture for a long time, they have learned to make very interesting new things, to develop their websites and to develop their marketing campaigns, to do their business analytics. So all of these things are available in there. And this is real life. This is how knowledge is being produced today. And this is how knowledge is being disseminated today. And this is how we should also be learning. And this is how we should also be teaching to the students. Thank you very much, I think.
Dr. Irfan, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. आपके talk की सबसे खूबसूरत बात मुझे ये लगी how direct you were in terms of not holding back and really sharing your wealth of experience. And the fact कि आपने अपनी talk में खुद ही अपना learning by doing experience बताया कि हमने ये try किया different universities में, ये नहीं काम किया. So if you're going to try it, learn from our experience and don't do this. The need for unfurling the passion for the learners, bringing back the love of learning, the blurring of the lines, and I'm so glad that that's happening. The interconnectivity amongst the different topics. एक और आपने खूबसूरत बात की कि there is by using projects and by using this learning by doing approach, we can actually celebrate the diversity of the expertise and the perspectives of different team members that bring so much value to the team, and we allow them to do that. What a fascinating talk, and personally learned a lot. Thank you for that. This was, and on behalf of TRG, I would say thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your time. Please do more of that.
I would also like to thank TRG and all the people who have organized and put in a lot of effort and time in doing this. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your. We will now, of course, move to our next session, which is the panel, and Azfar will come in. Azfar will come in and introduce the moderator as well as the panel. This is going to be another exciting session. Azfar, thank you for joining us.
Assalamualaikum, Azfar. How are you? Two Azfars are here now.
Two Azfars on the screen. Yes, pleasure be sharing the screen with you, and good to see you again. And thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this for TRG. And
Thank you for hosting.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward and excited to learning from you and your panel. So over to you.
Thank you, Azfar, and thanks to TRG for providing us an opportunity to host the program. I congratulate TRG for hosting this Digital LearnFest, and we were part since the beginning of this LearnFest when we hosted few years back the physical LearnFest at Movenpick Hotel, Karachi, and in every LearnFest, Nutshell Forum participated and hosted one session, and this time I am grateful to Umar Jaliyawala for his brilliant initiative, Sara Mashood, and all the other team members, all the seniors of TRG who are our mentors actually. So Nutshell Dialogue is all about elevating society with business, and we engage our three very dear friends. They are actually the rock stars of Pakistan. Two panelists, two women leaders, outstanding women leaders, and my forecast is that both of them will lead this country in the near future. Our first panelist is Dr. Aisha Khan. She is our Corporate Pakistan Group member. She is the country head Pakistan for Acumen, and she is also the board member of Bank Al Falah Limited. Our second panelist is my very dear friend and another Corporate Pakistan Group very active member and part of our managing committee. She is Chartered Accountant Aila Majid. She is the Managing Director of Khalid Majid Hussain Chartered Accountants. She is the Global Council member and the board member of ACCA. And she is also the young global leader of World Economic Forum. And she is the member of the Global Agenda Council of Energy of World Economic Forum. An outstanding profile of Ayla, an outstanding profile of Aisha. And with these two brilliant women leaders, our moderator is my very dear friend and my brother, British Pakistani, one of our assets for Pakistan, Faraz Khan. He's also the member of Corporate Pakistan Group, and he's part of our think tank since the beginning of Corporate Pakistan Group. He's the CEO of Seed Ventures, and he's also the visiting professor of St. Mary School, London, an outstanding person. So these three rock stars will conduct this show. Topic is very important, elevating society with business. And without any further delay, I want to hand over the further proceedings to my friend Faraz Khan for the introduction and interaction with Aisha and Ayla. Over to you, Faraz.
Thank you so much. As per Nutshell Conferences and TRG LearnFest for actually curating this conversation, much needed one, especially the times that we're in, economically and the whole COVID environment. Like Azfar has introduced our wonderful panels, they're dear friends and absolute inspirational ladies who are leading their own verticals, and I'm sure they will become extremely more impactful with times to come. Now, let me start with a googly, as they say. We grew up with the fact that our business is supposed to make profit, and that is the purpose of the business. And government, the development sector, and the good people are supposed to do the good stuff for society. And that was the concept, primarily, that the education, the times that we're living in, gave us, at least to in our generation. What has changed? Why business should elevate society? Business is supposed to be profit making. So it's a reverse question, and I would ask Aisha and Ayla. I think Aisha, you being with acumen, can actually take the brunt of this question for the first time, and then Ayla can actually join in.
Okay, sure. Thank you, everyone. Azfar, thank you for the wonderful introduction, and thanks to the Nutshell Forum for organizing this and TRG for hosting it. The program just looks so interesting. I wish I could have listened in on more of it than I did already. So, Faraz, you're absolutely right. You know, all of us, and we're certainly at the age group in which all of us grew up with this whole idea of, as Sanderson put it, the only business of business is actually doing business. And the idea was you focus entirely on making profit. You may have a CSR wing on the side that does stuff, but primarily that's so that you don't really suffer on your sales side by something terrible happening and then being implicated. Like if you go back to Nike sweatshops, happened way back in the 90s. And so the idea was, well, avoid the negative publication, just so you can actually make more money. And I grew up with it. I'm an economist. Whenever we did our functional optimization, we're constantly optimizing for profit. Saying, okay, how do you actually optimize? And back then, all of you remember Jack as the idol of what it manager, what company success really meant. And this gentleman raised profitability by tens of hundreds of percentage points there. What happened for us is that we found out it didn't work. So decades later, you look at the fact that inequality increased, the environment was decimated, the gains from capital being accrued to a certain percentage of society, to business, didn't necessarily spill out to the rest of society. And in fact, what you found that capital kept accumulating to the investor side, and workers kept getting poorer and poorer. And while some people, the past few decades have been great for poverty being lifted out, inequality has increased over time. The environment has been decimated. And when we look at our political processes, when you see the types of leaders who have been elected, it is quite obvious that money has played a role in also hijacking the political process. So what really happened was that we started looking at the results of this whole idea of the only business of business is making money. And that's all you need to focus on. In fact, business, since it's the engine of society, has such a strong and critical role to play. It has so many knock-on effects everywhere that at this point, it's almost a sort of code word, stakeholder management. You have, the CEO of BlackRock writing letters saying, at the end of the day, we are not all about profit. We're all about our stakeholder management. And from a personal note, I think as we've all been living through the past few months and looking at how COVID has struck and how our societies have been decimated in so many varied ways and how the impact of that, frankly, has fallen disproportionately on the poor, it's really obvious that we need to figure out how capital moves to its most efficient allocation. And by efficient, I don't mean the most profitable. I mean, how do you take money and get it to entities that in turn will unleash human potential and productivity across the board? So how do you, instead of, as a society, valuing what money, power, fame, which is what my generation grew up with, and I think it also spills over to the next generation, how do we start valuing something different? How do we value human dignity? How do we value human productivity? And in that, business not only has a critical role to play as an enabler, it is actually one of the prime movers. So the whole conversation has shifted. We have seen the impact of this, and I'm so happy to see that discourse also moving.
Thank you. Ayla, same question to you. Post your premise, if you can actually focus on the supply and distribution communities, how we need to rethink of the stakeholders in this new world as well. That would be great as well. Please.
Thank you, Faraz, and thank you, TRG. Thank you, Azfar Nutshell, for allowing me to share my thoughts. It is a topic that is very close to my heart, and I think even on a Saturday morning, we are quite excited to talk about this. And lovely to be joined by friends Faraz and Aisha and Azfar. So when I look at what's the role of business, so I think the role of business over time has really changed. And it has changed also for the reason because when we analyze, and now I'll slightly talk from the perspective of the business owners or the shareholders, or sort of when shareholders are looking at making strategies. I think the lens of making decisions has really evolved. And there is greater awareness that it is not only about making money, but even if we want to make money and we want to be sustainable, the older ways are not going to be, they're not going to generate profits, or they're not going to be sustainable. So I'll touch upon how businesses are looking at their stakeholders. So stakeholders earlier used to be probably just the shareholders, the investors, the financial institutions, maybe the suppliers, and then obviously greater sort of awareness came about people, and then employees, and all the others sort of got involved, and obviously the customer as well. But I think it is so important to look at every node and looking at how the planet really functions. I like to sort of visualize things from one end to the other, that what is the complete life cycle of a product, of a service, of a resource, and then one can sort of picture that planet is very much part of that. Any decision that we take now, which is sending out carbon emissions, maybe it's not immediately impacting us in the next few minutes, maybe in the next few months, or maybe not in the next few years. Eventually it will. And I'll sort of link here another sort of this discussion about climate change and about saving the planet, because if we don't have it, we will not have the planet. We have looked at it, COVID has really exposed the fragilities of the world, and that has actually sort of made us rethink at every level, whether it's at the management, whether it's at the governance level. Companies have sort of completely not evaluated this risk. And we understand that if we don't work together, if we don't collaborate with each other, what's happening? The glaciers are melting in Antarctica, but all the shorelines in the world, they are changing. They're going to have an impact on the communities there. Those communities will then have an impact on maybe the supply chains, as far as you talked about the supply side, the distribution side, etc., etc. And when we look at the growth of organizations, whether within a country or whether at a transnational level, it's also important to sort of see that how can businesses sustain themselves? How can they grow themselves? How can they serve? How can they innovate? People will have to come in. People will have to do it. And if there's not enough investment going into the well-being of people from all perspectives, of obviously economically, socially, mentally, so I think the whole paradigm has really shifted. And it's been shifted for a long time. And in our part of the world now, there is greater realization that the stakeholder that I need to address is this planet, is this clean air. So everything is every living organism is a stakeholder for us.
Thank you. I mean, that actually sets the tone of this conversation pretty well. Okay, another one. So I agree. business is supposed to take care of the society. Valid points from both of my inspirational friends. But then what is government going to do? What is the development sector going to do? Do you guys see a more integrated approach of a systemic change in place? How would investors react to this additional responsibility that peripherals पे 1% का CSR होता था? Now you're actually asking us to take care of the society and the environment and the people. So the investors will be discouraged. And what is government and development sector going to do? Aisha?
Can I?
Yeah. For us, this is fascinating because, you know, as we were having this conversation, I was also reflecting on the fact that one of the reasons for this shift, by the way, is not, frankly, our generation. It's, if you have spoken to young people, and I know you do, I think everyone in this group has engaged really a lot with younger people. It's actually these young people who are asking the right questions. So, you know, when I was going for my first job and figuring out a career path, one of the most important questions I was asking was, by the way, how much is this paying? And where is this going to end up? And that's what everyone was asking, right? Yeah. And now when I'm interviewing, these young people are asking me, but why should I do this? What are you actually doing as an organization to help the world, to make it a better place, actually make it a more sustainable planet, as Ayla was saying? That generation, so keep in mind that this generation that's come about is far more environmentally conscious, far more aware of the dangers of inequality, and far more of an activist generation. They really want to do something. I think that's desire. And so, coupled with the fact that the biggest transfer of wealth that we are seeing right now, trillions and trillions of dollars, is actually an intergenerational transfer from the older generation that accumulated billions and trillions, now to their children and their grandchildren. And so when we talk about stakeholders, actually, in boardrooms, the conversation has shifted. The conversation is not just about profit. Of course, it's there. I think profit is not a bad word. Profit is something that you need to have in order to be sustainable. And any entrepreneur or any business that loses sight of that may not be sustainable and may not survive to do any of the great impact. So, A, the conversation has changed. B, it's this whole idea of it will take all of it. And I will take the example of Pakistan because this is our country and ultimately this is what we're most interested in. You see the problems of 220 million people, the issues of education and Azfar, and we've seen on the nutshell some wonderful conversations around how do you actually look at 21 million children out of school? How do you solve that problem? The government doesn't have the resources and necessarily the ability to collaborate and work effectively. Public sector can only take you so far. We as Acumen have tried, investing in solutions for low cost, high quality education, and those are really difficult ones to scale up. I mean, this is something that needs public sector financing, grant financing, and it also needs the private sector to come together. So ultimately, we all live in this society, and ultimately, we can't pass the buck and say, this is only the government's responsibility, this is only the public sector's responsibility. We all play a role. And I think really in places like Pakistan, where the government has pulled back and left these vast open spaces in healthcare, in education, wherever you turn, there's an open space. Somewhere between the private sector and the public sector, we have to figure out how we solve it. Just stepping back and saying, ye to meri problem nahi hai, has not gotten us anywhere. And I think we all need to move forward and figure out what can we do. Ayla, I know you had.
Thank you, Dr. Aisha. Ayla, the same question, but with a slightly different frame from you. Would you say, I mean, I'm putting you on the spot for saying that, see, the development sector came into being because the government could not fulfill the needs of the people and bridge the gap between whatever they had. So development sector and philanthropy, that came into being. Do you think that this is the beginning of the demise of development sector if business is going to take this over? Or you think that there is a different mechanism that developing sector will take or look towards? I know it's a but I'm sure you can take this one.
It's actually a great question. I would love to respond to this. But before that, let me touch upon something that Aisha mentioned as well, the thought process of the younger generation. Let's look at what is the future of the world? Who is the future of the world? Who are the future decision makers of the world? In this 7+ billion population, more than half is young people. If we don't listen to them, if they're not part of the decision-making equation, then what are we doing? We are actually being really stupid. And I think for longevity or for probably making rational plans, you're not going to look behind you, you will look forward. And if we need to look forward, we need to address that. What are their concerns? What are their aspirations? What is their belief? What are their sets of what are their value sets? And how do they view the world in terms of working together and then addressing the needs of all stakeholders? So it's great that how the young generation is thinking how to address the major global issues, and the younger generation is much more collaborative. And if any peace is going to come about in years in the world, it'll be because of their push. It'll be because of the collective sort of the thought process or the narrative or the fundamental values, the base values that they all believe in. Now, coming to your question with regards to, is it the demise of the development sector? First of all, let's step back and analyze and understand that why did a greater space was taken by the development sector, and the development sector has done tremendously well, where a lot of stakeholders, including the governments, they failed and there was a gap. But now going forward, the need to put things right or to make investments to make the world sustainable, the development sector doesn't have that kind of resources. And looking at it from a business opportunity lens as well, the numbers are astonishing. If I were to give you the sustainability SDG business opportunity numbers just for Pakistan, the estimates are around $96 billion. We all have been reading and hearing a lot about the UN saying that 2.5 trillion needed every year for probably the next decade for the entire world. But let's focus on the country-specific case. And in that, so $96 billion for Pakistan. And out of that, about $44 billion is just for sustainable energy. And we know that we are in a time when we have probably excess energy, but excess energy is not the solution. We need to make sure that it's accessible, it's sustainable, it's environmental friendly, and it is affordable. And from business perspective, and then there are obviously, when we look at water and sanitation, when we look at supply chains, when we look at providing employment, etc., anything and everything, and there's such a strong business case. So where the development sector has sort of led or shown some sort of areas of concern, they've been adding value, but a lot of how they have been operating their business model in always was not sustainable. And where do you bring in that money from? Perhaps there will be many places where there will be a lot of partnerships, a lot of collaborations, and I greatly value that the learnings that have been there, the frameworks that they have developed, I think those partnerships can be really sort of one can sort of benefit and get a lot of value out from that. So and it's completely okay. Different sectors evolve, different collaborations evolve. Some stakeholders at some point in time, they're more relevant than the others. And now if greater awareness has come about that it is your responsibility and it is my responsibility, we might as well take it. And it is not about anyone's demise, I would say. It's just a natural process of evolution.
Well said. Mm-hmm. Well said. Okay, so what Dr. Aisha and yourself in the past 6-7 minutes have kind of shared your perspective on the future. Two things have come about. One is the importance of the youth and the future generation. And second is that we're moving from, like Dr. Aisha said, a cumulative generation to a sharing generation where there is more, resilience, and there is more appetite to actually do good in the youth. And there is more consciousness as well. Now, Ala, you said that this is a great business opportunity for businesses to step in and make that impact. My next question is, what should be the balance of purpose and profit? I know it's a very generic question, but let's say, and I know Dr. Aisha was itching to say that, because there is no one answer for that. But if you have to kind of look at it as in a percentage point, what is the tilt that you would like to actually create? And that would be very interesting for me to actually have that. Dr. Aisha?
For us, I don't think there's any profit without purpose. Purpose is what colors everything that you're doing. And if you look at any successful business, right, you take any of the great successes, they're all trying to solve a problem and then make things easier for consumers. So there is a larger purpose around what they're doing. And I think maybe the intent, maybe the thrust of your question also is around how do businesses think about, sometimes when it's resource allocation between activity A will generate revenue, activity B will generate less revenue, but perhaps more social impact, for lack of a better word. So how do you choose between these? And I think there's no real easy answer to it. I mean, this is, again, you're asking an economist, right? How do you choose between these two? It's not a one-shot game. If I think there's this gentleman called Simon Sinek who talks about this a lot. This whole idea of we're in an infinite game. We're not interacting with our stakeholders only once. Okay, today I'm going to send you these biscuits, tell you these biscuits, and then I'm disappearing. So whether you get sick from these biscuits or you are fine or you're happy, but think of a hotel, these are the packet of biscuits, you give me 100 rupees, I'm gone. No, that's not how it works. This is a game, and generations actually who are selling those biscuits are developing a relationship with the consumer and with the society as a whole. So ultimately, I think purpose and profit are the same thing. Without purpose, you will not be able to generate sustainable profit. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I think that's the case. And just a final, like a one little point when you were talking about the development sector, I wanted to add one thing. I actually don't think it's a great loss if it disappears, a big chunk of it, because it is hugely inefficient. When you're talking about foreign aid coming through, for $100 spent, actually $99 will go back to the donors, or in some way or the other through transfer pricing. $1 will actually get to the recipient. Or phir hum kahenge, oh, hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent on African aid, Asian aid, or Cuban aid. Right? So the parts of it that are hugely inefficient, which is where I think putting on what we call at the shorthand a business hat, which means really honing in on what is it that we're trying to do, having that model in front of you and saying, okay, ultimately, I am interested in providing good at the lowest possible price to this population of people. Let me figure out the best way to do it. Versus, okay, I have to work through this government, that government, I have to send the money back to the donor agency in some way. There's so many layers that come into it. I had the sort of dubious honor of also working at a development agency for a bit. And I tell you, the waste in resources, I was putting my hair out and saying, how is it that we're actually wasting so much money on something that could be resolved relatively easily? So frankly, if business kicking in means that half the development sector that is inefficient disappears, I think that's a good thing for the world over. I have no fears that I'm not shedding over that.
No, I agree with you. And there are two elements to that. And I would like you to kind of shed some light on this. So we do know that development aid is mandated as well. We also know there is a lot of inefficiency there as well. Of course, they've done some great stuff as well. The development aid's political mandate has been demonstrated recently with FCO and DFID's merger. So, you can actually see where the world is moving towards. Now, where do you see, and what kind of businesses, Ayla, you see reshaping this statement that that businesses should support, or societies? What are the examples of certain businesses that you can actually share with us that you look at it and you say, yeah, is तरीके से काम होना चाहिए?
Yeah. So first of all, let me just add one point here that let's all openly sort of agree and accept that profit making is completely fine. There's nothing bad about it, as long as you are doing it in the right manner. You are being transparent, you are solving a problem, as Aisha said, that so many businesses are solving problems and they are addressing issues, and there is an innovation to address the broader need if those innovations come about. And again, I link that back to that if those innovations are not there, then businesses will not grow. They will stop growing. They'll stop. The process of evolution will stop. So that's something that a lot of sectors, a lot of organizations, they have realized. And I will give you an example of the fossil fuel industry. The fossil fuel industry is now stepping in. First, obviously, the debate started with regards to, all right, we need to do our carbon capture, we need to reduce our carbon footprint, and they would start investing in sort of they would sort of go for set-offs. But then they started to look at their own processes, and then when they sort of covered that milestone, then what next? All right, this industry, we can obviously work like an ostrich and probably close our eyes, but if we sort of look forward, where the world is heading, what will remain relevant, what are the alternates coming about? So what are they doing now? They're investing in alternates, and it is a good thing from a business perspective. It is a more responsible thing, and it is again addressing all the stakeholders. Obviously, the return that they're providing to the shareholders, and in the process serving everyone else, curtailing the carbon emissions. And businesses now understand that there is more value that they can generate out of for this. So whether it's the transport sector, whether it is the fossil fuel industry, whether it is I would say even to some extent the FMCG, because people are now the buyers around the world, they have reshaped their behaviors as well. So where they would be completely okay going for, say, buying probably, say, a bag of cereal, and if they have an option of, say, something organic with an organic completely sort of decompostable packing, one would go for that, and probably not the other one. And looking at that, how one sort of even a single molecule, what's the journey of a single molecule, and how they can get even say financial value out of that, and in the process addressing the whole concern. Now there are packagings, and I think this was some company was doing maybe with coffee cups or something, that they would have seeds in it, that when you sort of dispose it off, trees would start growing. There are sort of all these interesting innovations, and these are small little simple solutions. So I would say that across almost, there's hardly any industry that I can think of that is not doing it. And those who are at one end of the spectrum, where their present carbon emission contribution or their present level of adding to the global sustainability is very low, even they are doing this. And in terms of how they are planning their future strategy, and how they are planning their 3 years, 5 years business plans, I think from people who would have invested in probably drilling an oil well, they would be then investing in something completely different, which has a longer life, which is more sustainable, and will ensure that they keep on getting their financial returns as well. So I mean, I can't think of probably an industry that's being very complacent. Maybe not everyone is at the same stage, at the same stage of readiness, but I think a lot of industries they are moving forward. Yeah.
Okay, I've got. Thank you so much, Ayla. This was quite elaborate and useful. Now, based out of the conversation, there are just two elements that has come out that I would love you guys to kind of share your opinion on. Do you think that in coming times we would need to have to rethink the regulatory reforms of what percentage of profit and purpose should be? Because this is a great opportunity for businesses, and vulturism might prevail and in fact might grow. So in order to curtail that, because development sector is in a way taking a kind of a backseat and rethinking their way forward. Government is also looking towards businesses and the private sector as well to kind of take a lead and a more active role. That is a great opportunity, but at the same time, for a vulture mindset, it can really go the counter way. So do you think regulatory reforms in order to curtail a situation, let's say 20 years down the road, is critical? Do we need to think about it? Do we need to worry about it? Dr. Aisha?
Raz, I mean, it's sort of, we have to step back and touch on, we're talking about Pakistan at this point, right, in our decision making. And somewhere in the chat, I also saw a question around taxes, which is related to this when we talk about public sector allocation of resource. You know, I heard this wonderful talk again. I feel like I'm constantly like pushing Nutshell Forum, but over the past few weeks, I've heard these amazing talks. One of them was by Dr. Atif. And here, the idea really was Azfar Mir, and he talked about how decision-making is so flawed in our government. In fact, that we're not efficient in terms of figuring out where resources should be allocated. And while on the surface, that seems like a very straightforward comment to make, and everyone knows it. But when you're talking about questions of businesses also trusting the government to then divert whatever tax revenues the business contributes to the government to an efficient disposal of that, so that you set up the right structure for business, provide them energy in a consistent way, provide them water, sanitation, you know, all the basics that a business needs, and a certain quality of human resources. Unfortunately, that's not happening, right? And so we now live in a bubble. A little earlier, you know, when we were having our minor talk, all of us were wondering about, do we have our generators in place so that they kick in, so that this talk isn't interrupted? So we're all finding ways of working around the public sector, sort of pulling away from providing these necessary infrastructure and support systems that human beings need to thrive. There is a critical role of government in here. I vote for my government because I trust the government, I pay my taxes, I trust the government to provide these for everyone. It is not important to me that I can now create this for myself and create this, but ultimately this is for society. And if we go back to the question of values, tax allocation, government regulation, to me, there is no way Pakistan can actually come out of the situation and take its position in being the strong country that it should be without all of us coming together and working towards lifting average Pakistan. Our life, the average Pakistani life, is actually full of constant fight. You know, I was sitting with someone who was saying that, you know, our poor people, they don't do anything. They go home, they work for 5 hours a month. How is that? Then they're just not doing anything. And I said, do you realize how much just get a kerosene lamp in their home, to go and find water, to do basic things, and how this individual is completely decimated if someone in their family is sick because government has abdicated responsibility for that. ultimately, whether it's business or individuals or public sector, we all have to come together and play a role in it. Society will not, and I'm biased in the Pakistani sense, we in Pakistan cannot afford not to upgrade society because there's no way forward without it. Neither can government, neither can the development sector, neither as individuals can the four of us afford to only think about us. Because all of us बचपन से we've been hearing Pakistan एक नाजुक मोड़ पे है, Pakistan एक नाजुक मोड़ पे है. I mean, it's always been at a नाजुक मोड़. We have to figure out how to move it forward. This is the time. We have the world in front of us, the logical revolution. We have the tools at our disposal. We can't look over our shoulder and say someone else has to do it. All of us.
True. Well said. Ayla,
Yeah.
what's your take on this?
Faraz, I would say that I think both are important. The regulation is important, but then I'll also talk from the other side of the table as well. So why regulation is important? Because it does provide clarity. It does set the scene. It sort of gives a sense of where things should be moving. Policies are extremely important, and at times they also can work as incentives for other stakeholders, including businesses, including the private sector, to come in and set up projects, set up solutions where there is a need. However, having said this, if the world is not static, why should the policies be? Why should the regulations be? They
Well
should
said.
not be set in stone. They should be very forward looking, and there should be a continuous change in the same as well, but change obviously for the better, not a regressive change by any manner. Now, from the other side of the table, over regulation really kills innovation. Over regulation even kills competition. And I think we have a remarkable case in Pakistan, and I like to sort of use that analogy for a lot of other sectors as well. The telecom sector. Look at the value it created. Look at how the entire and obviously it sort of emerged from policies. It emerged from some sort of frameworks. To some extent, there is regulation as well. But when competition came in the market, it came with innovation. It sort of provided benefit to almost every single stakeholder, and it sort of gave affordability as well. It gave access to people, and now with sort of the now moving towards, say, not just from the connectivity that was the base, and then moving towards your financial instrument, financial wallets through your phone, etc., and now moving towards the ease of transacting with each other. There are so many benefits that are not even being measured. Maybe somebody is, but I think to a large extent there are so many benefits that are not being measured. So look at that, where when the regulation took a step back, what amazing things competition did. But at the same time, obviously there needs to be a little check and balance. And why so? Because to make sure that different organizations or different sectors, they don't collude, or they don't sort of come make mechanisms where there are anti-competitive behaviors, which then sort of which are not beneficial for the consumers, or they're hurting some stakeholders in a manner. So there has to be check. But I think what the regulators, what the policymakers should do is they should set out frameworks. They should do it with a lot of thought put into this, and they should always keep a window open for making improvements and making changes. And I think that's a mindset shift that we need to have. And I'll just sort of add my sort of this point here with an adding just adding one bit here, that we need to have a partnership mind frame. We need we in our country, we are sort of getting more and more polarized, that it's them and it's me. If we don't sit on the table, how do you solve anything really? So I think that's extremely important.
Well said. I think this both your closing remarks have actually culminated in a frame that is very hopeful for not only for Pakistan, but I think for the world as well. What I loved about the conversation was that it was pragmatic. It was not just saying yes. We talked about some tough areas, tough questions, and there were some very candid opinions and answers. So thank you so much. I think individually we agree that in Pakistan as a nation we all do a lot of good. I think that needs to translate in a more active institutional roles, and that institutional momentum needs to actually bring that systemic change that we all are talking about. And I think with individuals like yourselves, the leadership like yourselves, that day is not that far away. I'd like to really thank you, for being here on a Saturday morning, and I would like to thank Azfar and Nutshell Conferences for giving us this opportunity to curate this conversation. So over to you, Azfar, and thank you once again.
Thanks for us. Thanks, Aisha, and thanks to Ayla. All three of you were brilliant. And one point Ayla mentioned about the collaboration of the partnership. I think there is more need of collaboration and synergies amongst all the concerned stakeholders. And one point she mentioned about the opportunities. There are hurdles, there are barriers in our countries, and there is a history. But there are unlimited opportunities as well. So there is a need to promote all these opportunities, identify these opportunities, and to create a positive enabling environment for the entrepreneurs to do the constructive work. With this note, I'm handing over the proceedings to Azfar Mir of TRG LearnFest. I'm again grateful to TRG LearnFest. This is the 6th day of TRG LearnFest, and they are doing amazing work digitally this year because of the lockdown and everything. But this is an opportunity I think we should consider to host this more and more in the coming years as well on the digital platform to engage the global community as well. So again, thanks to Aisha, Ayla, and Faraz, and thanks to Mayor Jaliawala, Sarah Mashood, and the TRG Managing Committee and Azfar Ahsan. Over to you.
Don't miss this exciting opportunity to learn at Pakistan's first learning festival.
Do you understand the difference between disability and being differently able?
All about learning with fun. Simply because this is for the first time we, the trainers, are paying for you to come and get trained. Jeete raho.
Be a change agent.
Learning is unlimited.
At LearnFest. Turn yourself on.
Get ready for series of highly engaging and powerful training sessions at LearnFest.
See you there.
Thank you very much, असफर भाई, फराज भाई. Wonderful to see you. मैंने dialogue तो miss किया, लेकिन मुझे यकीन है बहुत अच्छा रहा होगा. Looking at the people and how असफर भाई prepares. Great to see you. Azfar has disappeared, and I wanted to make sure कि मैं शक्ल दिखा के आपका शुक्रिया जरूर अदा करूं.
No, आपका शुक्रिया, and I think you and your team is doing amazing work, and you decided to continue this LearnFest instead of the gap. And this was much needed. I'm listening to very good reviews about different sessions. Of course, I attended many sessions in the last 5 days, but of course, I was unable to attend every session. But LearnFest is going amazing, and do more and more. And in addition to physical events in the coming years, continue this virtual thing also, because here is an opportunity to engage the thousands and thousands of individuals easily. So good luck
You
to
know,
you.
now that Mr. Azfar Ahsan has said it, it looks like that's the way it's gonna be. कल भी सारे पैनलिस्ट ने PhD वालों ने यही कहा कि फिजिकल तो रिज्यूम होगा लेकिन डिजिटल ने अपनी स्ट्रेंथ दिखाई है, एक्सेस दिखाया है और इतनी एक्सपर्टीज साथ लाना वैसे मुमकिन नहीं था. You have worked very hard to make this happen
Well,
physically.
actually, I'm a student of
And it's,
conference management, and my forecast is I placed on my Facebook 2 months back as well that after 1 year, the physical conferences and physical event size will be much bigger in comparison with the pre-COVID world. Because now you are using the mediums, you know the access to the global community, how to engage them. And there is an opportunity to, promote your agenda, promote your narrative, promote your country as well, and to share with maximum stakeholders. So we should evaluate and upgrade ourselves for the future and design everything accordingly. I think the combination of virtual and the physical will make this much bigger in comparison with the previous. So this is the blessing, and this is an opportunity after the COVID world. I'm grateful to COVID that they provided us an opportunity. So this should be our mindset, and I'm very happy. So these are the learnings, and
बड़े बदल गए, बाबे बदल गए, people, companies who wouldn't change, stores that would say never deliver.
We are using, multiple digital platforms. Otherwise, we were unable to do anything. But this was really a blessing, despite all the troubles the global community faced. Thousands of individuals lost their life, but I think there is a need of positivity. There is a complete shift in the mindset, actually. So we should learn and we should practice after some time instead of coming back to again the old one. The new normal is really a good opportunity for everyone.
Scary and exciting. Thank you, Azfar bhai. Wonderful thoughts there. Faraz bhai, do you want to say something? Thank you. I'm glad you were able to make it and you were part of the LearnFest.
You should listen to Faraz again because, he's the rock star of the future. He's the rock star right now. He's the biggest leader for the future. So taking appointment
Faraz,
him will be a biggest problem for all of us. So
Faraz is the real rock star when you're traveling with him. On that note, thank you very much, the two of you, for being awesome, and the panelists. Take care.